After the two fantastic sessions, we are back with the third one. Myself, Mr. Prince Dharamshi, I'm glad to welcome the person who is multidisciplinary in true sense of terms, Mr. A. H. Sagar. He is an international speaker who links philosophy with technological teaching and learning. A person who is well known for his intelligence in the field of education, philosophy, linguistics, history, economics, politics, biology, ethics, engineering, and foreign policies. Oh my God, fantastic, sir. A researcher and a national level basketball player. Along with many years of experience, he has completed post-graduation degree in English from India, Masters of Science, MSc from University of Edinburgh, and have studied philosophy from University College London. He trains not only students but also teachers, professors, principals, parents, academicians, policymakers, whereas he uses the sports as the medium for inspiration to his beloved students. Mr. A. H. Sagar is the perfect example of humanity is the sign of intelligence. I present to you Mr. A. H. Sagar, the person who has delivered more than 513 lectures all over the invitations. The one who says the more he learns, he realizes how little he knows. Let's welcome the great learner, Mr. A. H. Sagar, on topic New Age Philosophical Foundations for Technology-Based Teaching and Learning. Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here today. And first of all, I would like to thank the principal who managed to get hold of me and welcome me here. Thank you very much, madam. And Professor Deshpande, who actually introduced me to the principal. Professor Deshpande and I, we met at a television interview, and it was nice of him to provide my reference to the principal. So that's how I'm here. So hello, Maharashtra. I wish we could have, I could have spoken to you face to face, but we have to make the best of the time we have. So I'm going to try to introduce you to certain things today because a lot of time constraint. I'll introduce you to certain things based on which you can do in-depth research. Or if you have any questions, I'll give you my details. You can also get in touch with me and ask. Does this sound okay? I know you can put your hands up or something as such, although I can't hear you, but I hope you would be listening. Okay, let's start. The unexamined life is not worth living. That's an important question asked by Socrates, a Greek philosopher. Socrates went on to inspire Plato. Plato inspired Aristotle, and Aristotle was a teacher of Alexander the Great, who went to conquer the world. He wanted to spread Hellenic Greek values around the world. Unfortunately, he got married to a Persian woman, came back in Persian garments, and people in the streets of Athens were giggling. What I meant was, he went to change the world, but in the process of changing the world, he changed his own self, okay, which is a bit of learning in itself, okay. And Socrates, who inspired Plato, Plato used to run an academy. It's called Plato's Academy. In Plato's Academy, Aristotle was a student, okay. Plato wrote a book called Imitation. In his book Imitation, Plato said, you know, poets are fools because they keep imitating everything. They don't do anything original, okay. And Aristotle didn't fight with his teacher. He respectfully disagreed, and he challenged his teacher's ideas, and he wrote a book called Poetic Truth. Even in the Department of English Literature today, you study poetics written by Aristotle. And the first line of the book was, poetry is truer than the truth. Okay, so teacher and student arguing and other people making notes, which is quite interesting, how the teaching and learning used to take place as opposed to one way. Okay, the students used to, Aristotle used to challenge teacher, and they used to have a dialogue, and other students used to make notes, which is extremely important. I want you all to remember this sentence: the unexamined life is not worth living, and you have to think over it, whether I ought to examine it or not. Okay, because I can't insist or compel you to examine your own lives, but as a teacher, I think it is wise enough to always examine every action of ours. Okay, I'll start by giving a simple example of mine. I started my schooling in a small place in Karnataka. It was a very strict school, and you're not allowed to ask a lot of questions. And I was very notorious and a very naughty child. I was extremely naughty in asking questions. So my teacher told me when I was in 7th standard, she said, write it in your book, you'll be a big loser in life. So listening to the teacher, I actually wrote it in the book that I'll be a loser in life. Okay. By the time I reached high school, I had lost interest in schooling because the teachers were very boring and uninteresting. I used to wish that something should happen to the school so that I get more holidays. Maybe teachers should fall sick or something should happen so that I get more holidays. I used to wish like that because the teachers were so excruciatingly boring. Okay, I think it has come true now, unfortunately. I lost interest in schooling and I started playing basketball. On the basketball court, my mind really bloomed. Okay, and I became good in the sport. So there's a factory in Bangalore called HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, an aircraft manufacturing company. They offered me a job. They said, "Oh, would you like to play for a company?" And I said, "Sure, sounds good." Then I went into playing basketball, but it was very difficult to convince parents. How to convince parents that I'm going to quit studies and go into playing sports? Nobody encourages that. Okay, so my parents also lost all hope. So my first war of independence, non-violent civil disobedience movement, was at home to convince my parents that I want to play basketball. Okay, but eventually I managed to do so. Eventually I convinced my parents and I went to Bangalore and I started playing professional basketball. But nobody thought professional basketball would fetch any money. You go to any wedding, people will ask you, what does your child do? And you try telling people that my child plays. They laugh. Every child plays. What does he do for living? But my living was playing basketball. They used to pay me salary for playing basketball. Okay. And eventually I became the captain of Karnataka state basketball team. My picture were all around the newspapers. And I was very immature. Okay. So I wanted to go back and tell my teacher, look, you told me that I'll be a big loser in life. Look what happened now. I wanted to go back and tell my teacher. I went back to my school. You know what happened? As soon as I entered the classroom, my teacher told me something that I've never forgotten. My picture was on the notice board already that my school child is a national basketball player. They put up my paper cuttings on my school notice board. And as soon as I entered the class, my teacher told me, Sagar, I knew you would always do something. That's why I scolded you. I didn't know what to tell my teacher. I was shocked. But I learned a very important lesson on that day in my life, that anytime you have original ideas, new ideas, the first compliment, mind you, the first compliment you'll get is that you're mad, you're crazy. Okay. And if you haven't got such a compliment till now, you can assume that you're not doing anything interesting, exciting, or original. Because if you are doing something exciting, original, and interesting, people will say that you're crazy, you're mad, you can't do anything. And it's a compliment worth welcoming. That's how I started. That attitude of questioning, challenging, took me around the world. That helped me to work with many Nobel laureates from different parts of the world. This question everything kind of attitude, okay, which many students don't have in the classroom, because teachers have internal marks. That's the biggest weapon nowadays teachers have. They think they use it as a weapon, that if students ask questions, they're like, do you want to pass or not? Or should I cut your internal marks? This attitude, the classroom, instead of democratic attitude, will not go really long. And in fact, we should imbibe this democratic attitude in students, that they should stand up and question respectfully. A student who cannot question the teacher inside the classroom, mind you, teacher doesn't have gunmen's bodyguards behind them. And if the students can't question a teacher, how can they question the prime minister in the parliament? In the class, if a student asks question, they may lose internal marks. Outside, if they question politicians, sometimes they may lose their life. So one who doesn't have confidence to question teacher, it's very hard to build confidence in them to question authority or the politicians, to hold them accountable. Okay, so this questioning kind of attitude ought to be built in students. Okay, now this is something for you to think about. What is it that you see on your screen? Many of you may think it's a world map. Yes, if I would have been face to face, then they would have said, yes, it's a world map, or it's a projection of world map. All these kinds of answers I get usually when I go for talks. Okay, I'm sorry to break your heart. This is not the world map, but for 50 years, We have shown this to our students as the world map. Even now, if you go to certain schools and colleges, they still show this as the world map, which is quite shocking and unbelievable. This is called Mercator's projection. What is it called? It's called Mercator's projection. Mercator, who was a European, projected this map to the world, put Europe at the center of the whole world. Okay, and if you look at the map carefully, all the countries which colonized us, okay, all the countries which colonized us are on the top, all the colonizers on the top, all the colonized below, rulers on the top, those who were ruled below, which kind of had deep impact on our psyche, which is quite interesting in itself. Nobody ever questioned it for 50 years. Now, if you look at this screen, what do you see now? The part which has been colored dark is actually the real size of the continent. Can you believe that? Look at the size of Africa. It's huge. But Mercator projected it to be tiny. Okay, look at the size of India or America, which is very tiny, projected to be huge. Look at the size of Greenland, which is a tiny Caucasian country, but because it's a white person's country, Mercator projected it to be very huge. Now, I won't stop there. I'll challenge things that you believe to be true. Because unless you break these myths, we can't grow forward on a strong foundation. What do you think about this map? When I present this map, when I go for talks, lectures in schools, colleges, and universities, I see shocks, bewilderment. You know, they're petrified to look at this map. They're like, so this is not right. There is something wrong in this map. Why don't you turn it upside down? They tell me. Okay, this map, there is nothing wrong in this map. This map is absolutely perfect and can be used. We never use it. You know why? Because we never look at the world in this manner. Okay, we never look at the world in this manner. In fact, most of you might be feeling uncomfortable looking at this map. Sir, why don't you please turn it? Then I'll feel very comfortable, you might be thinking. But that's not just a map. That's the way we look at our lives. That's the way we teach. That's based on our teaching, learning philosophy. You know, we have not challenged the age-old methods. Okay, try showing this map in your home or in your school or college, and look at students' reactions. Okay, then you'll know how much you ought to be brainwashed till now to be bewildered looking at this map. By the way, there is nothing wrong in this map because we have all read minimum science. Earth is a pale blue floating dot in the universe. Okay, Earth is not like a glass which says this side up and that side down. Okay, it's suspended in space. Okay, so this is an absolute perfect map and it can be used. This is the way we should start rethinking things that we believe to be true. Next, I'll start with another question. You know, how many senses do we have? This is a very simple question which you are asked in school. Okay, and many of you know, many of you like by hearted it. 5 senses, and if I ask you which are the 5 senses, you'll reply. Okay, unfortunately, that's not true. We had this idea that we have 5 senses. The idea that we had 5 senses came from 350 BC, or maybe even before, if you look into it carefully. And the idea was from Aristotle. However, there has been a lot of research done on it. Professor Barry C. Smith from Cambridge University started his research on wine tasting. Wine tasting, okay, and he went on to become research on human senses, and he found that there are 22 to 33 senses and still counting. Okay, when you stand on your feet and when you balance yourself, okay, which of the 5 senses help you in balancing? So he came up with this idea of sense of equilibrioception, okay, sense of thermoception. See, we believed 5 senses. Then a movie came 6 senses. So everyone believed there are 6 senses. Okay, but Barry Smith says there are 22 to 33 senses. Now there is a whole department in Cambridge University studying only about human senses. So think about it. From your school, you have been taught 5 senses. Professor Smith says 22 to 33 senses. What is the truth? Are you confused? If you are confused, then you are in a very good place, because fools are too sure about themselves. Wise people are too full of doubts. People who have doubts, who think, who rethink, who question, who re-question, who learn, who relearn and unlearn, they make history. Okay, they do something new. Okay, so you have to question things in that manner. Remember, 5 senses you believed. Smith says 22 to 33 senses, still counting. Now, if your student asks you in the class, sir, how many, or madam, how many senses do we have? What will you tell? Can you see how challenging it is? Okay, there are many things like this which I can debunk, but since we have time constraint, I won't go through it in detail, but this is just something for you to look at. Next, let's go into latest teaching technologies, because remember, I'll show you some teaching technologies, latest teaching learning technologies, and then I'll go into the philosophy behind it, because unless you have philosophical foundations, you can't do anything about it. We have something called immersive learning, augmented reality, and virtual reality, which has come up now. Basically, what it means is they reconstruct reality so that you can feel close to it. What they're doing is, for example, you wear something like a mask or a headset, and you feel actually you are, take say, in Egypt, looking at the pyramids. Going to Egypt from here might be quite difficult, whereas sitting in your college, if you wear a headset, you'll feel as if you're walking, looking at the Great Pyramid at Giza, so close, okay? And students might have life-changing impact by this. You know, they might try to go into different departments like archaeology, which is a not very popular department nowadays, because everybody wants to go into something which fetches them more money. Not very interesting and fascinating aspects of life. Using this immersive learning technology or augmented reality, you can go into space just by wearing a headset in the classroom, okay, which will have a completely different experience for you. It started with 3D, and now we go into different aspects as such. It has problems because it may enhance reality after looking at it through your headset. When you actually go to the Pyramid of Giza and visit it, you might not find it as exciting as you found it when you're wearing a headset. So maybe it enhances reality, which may be a problem, may give you false perception. But every technology has positives and negatives. I'll tell you something. Technology is a double-edged sword. Technology is like a double-edged sword. Remember that. A hammer doesn't tell you what to do with it. Okay, you can use the hammer to construct a house. You can use the same hammer to bash someone up. Okay, but the hammer doesn't tell you how to use it. People who wield the hammer should know. That's why ethics and moral philosophy is very important. I won't go through it in detail because we don't have enough time. Perhaps when I meet you or when I visit your college after this COVID-19, I'll explain it to you in detail regarding ethics, moral philosophy. What is the difference between morality and ethics, and what are the theories present? Next is adaptive learning and personalized education. What is adaptive learning? Students adapting to teachers is old. Now, teachers have to frame their curriculum and deliver it to the classroom in such a manner that teachers ought to adapt to students' learning patterns. We have to identify students' learning patterns, their preferences, their behavioral tendencies, their needs, and then frame our curriculum accordingly. Okay, this might seem shocking for some, but it's extremely important. It's already put into place in many schools, colleges, and universities in developed countries, but it is coming here. We have to be prepared for it. It's a particular philosophy. I'll explain what philosophy it's based on. But basically, adaptive learning says we have to adapt our teaching methodologies based on students' needs. How a child learns, how an adult learns, how they ought to be taught. Okay, all these things have to be gone through in detail. Based on that, we teach. That's adaptive learning. Then we have something called gamification. You might have heard about it, gamification. Why does my child play so much PUBG? Many of you might be worried about it. Why students play PUBG so much? Looking at that phenomena, they have come up with something called gamification. Why can't we turn learning, classroom learning, in the form of a game, so that students also get hooked to learning classroom things the way they play PUBG? You know, that kind of idea. I hope you understood my example. So gamification is one of the best ways to encourage and motivate students. Okay, you can have wonderful sessions in the classroom. There are many websites. If you want, I can send you links using which you can make classroom learning a lot of fun, exciting, and enthusiastic. You know, I used to have teachers in my school who used to tell, I want pin drop silence in the classroom, you know, and we used to actually drop a pin and see whether anyone can hear. But constructive noise is always good, and you can have fantastic classrooms with a lot of enthusiasm and fun. And when students are enjoying, then classes become really interesting, and then they want to come back to your class. Okay, then they'll be waiting for your class next time around. In one of my recent television interviews, I told this. I told them, why students bunk classes and go to the movies? Why can't they bunk movies and come back to the classes? Can't we make classes so interesting? And in order to do that, gamification is one of the tools. These are just examples. They have positives and negatives as well, but these are the new technologies which are coming up, trending in 2020 for our classroom. Next, we have learning analytics and data. It's so data driven now. They have such wonderful data coming in regarding students' learning patterns. Amazing different forms of statistics and data are coming regarding students' learning patterns, so that you identify where exactly the problem in students' learning and where exactly I'm going wrong, and target the problem. It's like targeting a virus. Okay, you identify where exactly it is attacking, what exactly it is doing, and come up with the medicine to target the virus. Similarly, in teaching also, we target where exactly the students are not able to catch into our teaching and target it. I'll give an example for that. If you look at this slide, this is an analytic value escalator. Okay, we call it Gartner's analytic value escalator. And if you look at it carefully, there is hindsight, insight, and foresight. Okay, it starts from information and it demonstrates how it can be optimized based on the data given. And what are the different kinds of data we need for that? Descriptive data, which explains what actually happened. And then you need diagnostic analytics data, which tells you why did it happen. And then you have predictive analytics, which tells you what will happen. And finally, we have how can we make it happen. Okay, so this can be adapted in the classroom. A school can adopt this philosophy in the classroom to target students' learning problems. Okay, these things, whether you like it or not, are coming into our classrooms, so we have to prepare for it. The chalk and talk method, where you can go on and on and on. When students are sleeping at the last bench, those days are gone. You have to make it extremely exciting, use a lot of humor in the classroom to keep them hooked. Okay, because movies are like that. Movies are extremely attractive, and these actors who are telling all sorts of horrible things are taking our students away from the classroom. See, first day, first show, the movies are full, and first day, first class, no one is coming to the college. We have to wait for a week after opening the college for full strength, which is quite shocking in itself. So how can we stop that? Okay, that can only happen if we make classes interesting. And by the way, as I was telling, actors are giving examples like dane dane mein kesar ka dam. That is tobacco, which causes cancer. Such are advertisements which are using psychology, cognitive neurosciences to prepare targeted advertisements to attack children's brain. And when a multi-billion-dollar corporation prepares an advertisement and attacks students' brain, a middle-class family doesn't have enough software to protect themselves. Teachers ought to do this job. They have to demythalize the mytholized philosophies and break the myths. So, which is a very big challenge. Actors are very attractive, and teachers find it hard to dress up to college every day, which is very difficult. So, we have to make classes more interesting and bring our students back from the cinemas. You know, the actors who say, boost is the secret of my energy. No, fruits and vegetables are the secret of your energy, not boost. And to inform that to the students, we need a lot of data and we have to do a lot of circus, and all these tools will help us in this. Next, there are other tools which are coming up, such as micro-learning, which used to be there in B.Ed, but now they have tweaked it a little so that you can present your syllabus in a small bits so that students can actually understand. And there are content curation, speech-to-text option, like Alexa. You speak to Alexa, Alexa, can you define this word? And Alexa replies, okay? Many of our teachers' grandchildren know this, okay, which is very interesting. Then they have cloud computing. You can store data as much as possible. 3D printing, which is very exciting because they can bring anything to reality, okay, using 3D printing. And 5G technology, which is also come in many of the developed countries, is coming here. So you don't have to take a long time to download anything. 5G technologies will enhance education in the classroom also, because you don't have to see the screen where things are turning all the time. Automation, which has a lot of ethical problems. How much we ought to automate teaching learning? how much we ought to or how much we shouldn't, which is a challenge we are facing, and we have to go through it carefully. Then we have collaborative learning, which we are already doing now. Outdoor learning, which is kind of difficult at the moment. I'll give an example for outdoor learning. Outdoor learning is not very big in India, but outdoor learning is teachers take students on mountaineering and all these excursions. And in the process, students are asked to make notes and analyze it in detail, okay? Which is given a lot of importance in many of the developed countries, and we also have to start focusing on that. Then there is online data and cybersecurity, because everything is turning online now. How to protect our data and is a serious problem. It's a serious issue because your privacy is yours, and in order to protect that, we have to take a lot of precautions, which also should be taught to students. At a very young age, children go online and post a lot of pictures, but they don't know about data security and cyber security, which can be a serious problem. We have to counsel them about these aspects as well. Okay, now Daniel Dennett, a famous philosopher, said that there is no such thing as philosophy-free science or education for that matter. There is only science whose philosophical baggage is taken on board without examination. Every one of you attending this seminar, all the panelists, all of you have your own educational philosophy. Whether you have knowingly taken it or unknowingly it has come on board, we don't know. But the challenge is for us to knowingly take what we need and let go things that we don't need, instead of saying like, oh, my great grandmother used to use this, so I think it might work. Okay, it's more research based now. I'll give you certain examples. You know, I have to tell you, when I came to India and I went to a party, friends told me, oh, Sagar, what did I say? When I said philosophy is very interesting, they thought philosophy is like, why do you need philosophy at this age? Only saints need to study philosophy. I'm sorry to tell you, philosophy basically means philosophia, which means love of wisdom. Love of wisdom. The very meaning of philosophy is love of wisdom. Philosophy is not just theology. Theology is a small aspect of philosophy. Okay, philosophy has different departments. As you can see, epistemology, which studies what is knowledge. Did you know that? Did you know that there is a department which studies what is knowledge? If a student asks a question in the classroom, what is knowledge? Many of the time we'll be thumped. You know, we translate it to our mother tongue. Okay, but what is knowledge is being studied by a department which is called epistemology. Episteme is knowledge, ology is study of it. Ontology studies what exists. I won't go through this in detail, but I want to introduce you to all these different departments. Know that the departments are not just social sciences, science and humanities. It's not like that. Not like physics, chemistry, biology, engineering, not just that. There are departments like epistemology, and students can go into all these different departments. Okay, now look at a simple question. Can there be knowledge without experience? Have you ever thought about it? Can there be knowledge without experience? Some of you may say yes, some of you may say no, but there are theories in relation to this. I don't want to go into detail, but I'll give you an example. See, there are different kinds of knowledge. For example, all bachelors are unmarried is true by definition. You don't need experience. If you read the sentence, you'll know that it is true by definition. So yes, there can be knowledge without experience, especially a priori knowledge. As you can see there, analytic a priori knowledge. There are different kinds of knowledge. Just to build awareness among you, I'm giving you these examples because you might not be introduced to these things. There are how many different kinds of knowledge are there? I'll just introduce you. Analytic a priori knowledge, analytic a posteriori knowledge, synthetic a priori knowledge, and synthetic a posteriori knowledge. Did you know that? I was shocked when I was introduced to these things. I didn't know that things go so much in depth. Okay, many of the times we are only superficial at the top, but there are so many things which we ought to understand. So when a student asks a simple question, what is knowledge? You see how deep one can go into this. Okay, then even there are different levels of knowledge. I want you to know this simple example because there's something called Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, NAC accreditation, UGC, and even AICT, they're all going into Bloom's taxonomy has been brought in. Although I have to tell you, Bloom's taxonomy is 50 years old. Lot of new taxonomies have come in, but now we are bringing in Bloom's taxonomy to our classroom after 50 50 years. Engineering colleges also, they are bringing in for NBA accreditation in engineering colleges, they are bringing in Bloom's taxonomy now after 50 years. Okay, imagine how much things have changed. And I have to tell you, Bloom's taxonomy was based on different levels of knowledge, okay, which still prevail. Things like factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and metacognitive knowledge. I know you're all really good in your own discipline, but teaching is a whole new word. Teaching is different than subject knowledge. You might have a lot of subject knowledge, but going and presenting it in the classroom is a whole different story. For that, we need to know the science as well as the art of teaching and learning. For that, we need all these important aspects. What are the educational philosophies which are present? Some of the educational philosophies which are present are idealism, realism, pragmatism, existentialism, perennialism, reconstructionism, information processing, behaviorism, cognitivism, also called as constructivism, and there is humanism. These are all educational philosophies. When I go to schools, colleges, and universities, if I want to know how good a teacher is, I'll ask a simple question. Based on what educational philosophy do you teach? What will be your answer if I come and ask you? So we have to look into it, whether you mix and match idealism and realism, whether you mix and match pragmatism and existentialism. All these things you have to go through when you teach in the classroom. Students might ask this question. You can't tell it's not in the syllabus, okay? And you can't tell that, oh, I'll cut your internal marks because you're asking silly questions. No, these are legitimate questions, okay? And we ought to know these things if we are teachers. Then every educational philosophy has its own idea. Its own idea. For example, if you look at the first one, perennialism, it speaks according to perennialism, what is reality, what is truth or knowledge, what is goodness, that is axiology. Every educational philosophy is bifurcated in this manner. It has its own way of explaining the way the world works. Basically, we are all venturing into understanding how things work, and we are trying to help our youngsters understand how things work, how the world around us works, how it exists, how it goes on, what might come in the future. For all that, we have to understand where it came from. So these are simple things which we ought to know if you're into teaching and learning. Next, I'll ask a simple question and we'll go on. How do children learn? How children learn first language? I'm sure many of you are getting many ideas. How children learn first language? As soon as I ask this question, some people children imitate, sir. They look at us and they imitate. They listen and they learn. And they speak and learn. Isn't it? They speak and learn. They listen and learn. They imitate. Okay, they read and learn. All these different aspects come into our mind. Isn't it? Why I'm telling you this is, I'll give an example. What we think is true is different than what actually happens. For example, what you think your brain is doing is very different than what your brain actually is doing. I'll give you some example regarding this. During the first half of the 20th century, behaviorism, an educational philosophy called behaviorism, taught by B.F. Skinner, was very prevalent. B.F. Skinner was he was worshipped. He was in Harvard University, and his idea of behaviorism was in every aspect of life. You name it, philosophy, anthropology, sociology, education, history, economics, biology, every aspect, even political science. In fact, it went so far as B.F. Skinner's behaviorism coinciding with Milton Friedman's greed is good, and also selfish gene theory by Richard Dawkins in Cambridge all came together to dismantle a democratically elected government in Chile. And they brought in a dictator called General Pinochet, and Milton Friedman said, I'll give shock treatment to Chile's economy. Educational theory and behaviorism had an impact on removing a democratic government. See how far theories can go, how far research can go. It's quite unbelievable to look at it. So behaviorism was prevailing in 20th century. Then what happened? What was the idea of behaviorism? The children imitate. The idea started from tabula rasa. What is tabula rasa? John Locke, a philosopher, his idea tabula rasa means children are blank slates. When children are born in the world, they are blank slates. Teachers love this. Teachers love this idea that children are blank slates and we are all powerful who pour into their vessel, who do that. Teachers are amazed by this idea. So this idea was very strong that children are tabula rasa. B.F. Skinner borrowed this. The children are blank slates, and when they interact with the world, they learn everything. Sounds good. Sounds very good, isn't it? However, my supervisor and my mentor, Professor Noam Chomsky, was in MIT. Okay, he was into linguistics. His idea, there's my teacher, that's my teacher and I. So Chomsky's idea was that, yeah, he's called arguably the most important intellectual alive. If you don't know about Professor Noam Chomsky, please go look him up. He's the most important intellectual alive and the most cited author on the planet. So when Chomsky challenged B.F. Skinner's theory, okay, he challenged his book Verbal Behavior, and Chomsky wrote a small book review. A small book review by Chomsky ended B.F. Skinner's career. Imagine, B.F. Skinner, such a powerful teacher, his career was ended by a small review written by B.F. Skinner, which was by Chomsky, which was very interesting. What he said was, children are not blank slates. Chomsky's idea started a cognitive revolution in the world. It had an impact on every aspect, every discipline in the world. His idea was children are not blank slates. Okay, what as I'll show you the right slide for that. His idea was children have genetically predetermined abilities to acquire elementary linguistic principles. Means मातृभाषा सीखने के लिए बच्चों के ब्रेन में हार्डवायर होता है पहले से. It is hardwired to learn first language. If this hardwiring is not there, no matter what you teach them, they would not learn. Okay, no matter how much exposure you give them, they would not learn. Okay, this revelation was quite shocking. Okay, and how did he prove? There are a lot of there are different examples he gave to prove it, and different research. Different kinds of research was being done. I won't give you all the examples, but I'll give you one simple example. Slaves from different parts of the world were taken to United States of America. Okay, they took people from different countries and made them slaves. They made them work in plantations in US. Okay, so when these people were working in plantations, they spoke different languages because they're from different parts of the world. Okay, and this language which you speak when you don't understand, it's called pidgin. For example, if I don't know Marathi and if I don't know English or any other language, and if I come to your place and if I had to communicate with you, I use broken language, which is called pidgin. Pidgin does not actually have a proper grammar. Okay, words are very chaotic, so it's called pidgin. So all these slaves were speaking pidgin. But when these slaves had children, according to you, your children should speak your language. But that's not how it happened. Children did not speak pidgin over there. Children introduced grammatical complexities into parents' language and started a new language altogether called creoles. Quite unbelievable. Spontaneously, they introduced grammatical complexity into parents' speech, and they came up with a new language called Creole. This was quite shocking and revealing. So now we don't call it language learning anymore. We call it language acquisition. From learning, it has shifted to acquisition. And linguistics has been the window for human brain. If you know human brain, then you can think about how I can educate that brain. If you don't know anything about human brain, how will you educate it? And I must tell you, human brain is like space. We know very little about human brain. 3 departments trying to understand human brain: cognitive neurosciences, philosophy of mind, and psychology. All 3 departments haven't got any big breakthroughs. Only linguistic got this a small one through Chomsky, but not big breakthroughs. So a child might actually ask in the classroom, "Sir, you are teaching us, isn't it?" And you say, "Yes." "Why are you teaching us?" "Oh, because we are adults, we have done PhD, that's why we are teaching you." Child will ask, "What do you know about my brain?" It's not in the syllabus. You can't say that, okay, because we have to know the brain. Human brain is like final frontier. They only do fMRI scans and they say this part of the brain lights up, that part of the brain lights up. So psychology says, come, sit, explain. How are you feeling? What is happening? Tell me, I'll counsel you, psychologists say. Cognitive neurosciences comes, oh, this psychology is bulldology. They don't know anything. You have to cut open the brain. You have to look at the neurons firing. You have to do fMRI scans. What do the psychologists know? They scold. And then philosophy of mind comes and they say, oh, both psychologists and cognitive scientists are wrong. We should go deeper. We should use inductive, deductive reasoning. We should hypothesize. And psychologists say, both these people don't know anything. both cognitive scientists and philosophers don't know anything. You have to understand people's emotions and feelings. So all three departments are fighting amongst themselves, and we don't know anything about human brain. It's called demarcation problem. What is called? It's called demarcation problem. These terminologies are very important, and you can remember it. Next, I think these are simple things which we can use in our classroom for everyday practice based on the philosophy that I have shown you. Each one of you should have an educational philosophy. Based on that, you can start by why I teach, what I teach, how I teach, and how I measure my effectiveness. By the way, when I say how I measure my effectiveness, it doesn't have to live up to the measurement of the markets. Okay, we are not preparing our students to fulfill the needs of the market. We are preparing our students so that they can extraordinarily come up with something new and exciting. That's why Humboldt, a German philosopher, said very beautifully, he said, humans are self-searching and self-perfecting beings, and constant external intervention will end up making them a tool of state. You may love what they do, but you hate what they've become. Okay, so if you don't want to do that, you should make sure the children do what they passionately love, so that every day of their life they can enjoy what they're doing. They don't have to wait for the weekends to go and party because they hate what they do every day at work. If you want to avoid it, you should make sure that your students passionately fall in love with them and then turn that into their profession which they love. Okay, that this method will be simple. See, if you go to something called IB, IB is International Baccalaureate. Okay, very rich kids study in IB schools. They don't teach subjects. They don't teach like physics, chemistry, biology. They have something called transdisciplinary themes. For example, if you go to Scandinavian countries, they have something called, if they introduce First World War, using First World War, they teach physics, chemistry, biology, sociology, anthropology, philosophy, philanthropology, all different aspects using one topic. See, for example, if you look at it here, when I ask you who we are, what will you tell if I ask you who we are? You might tell I'm a human being, I'm a biological organism, I'm a Homo sapien, I'm an Indian, I'm a Maharashtrian. See, so many things come in. I'm an earthling on planet Earth, Milky Way galaxy. Just a simple question, who we are, explores into so many things. And then when you go into where we are in place and time, how we express ourselves, how we organize ourselves, how the world works, and sharing the planet, all the syllabus that you've ever taught in your life comes into these 6 transdisciplinary themes. Okay, so you can come up with these new methods in the classroom, which will be fascinating in itself. And see how you can bifurcate your teaching actions based on simple things such as knowledge, concepts, skills, attitude, and action, which also comprises everything that you're trying to present in the class. So every time you come up with the topic, which of these aspects are you addressing? For example, if you're taking up a topic, is it does it belong to who we are? Is it belonging to the Greek concept form? Is it belonging to communication? Or does it belong to empathy, curiosity? These aspects you can relate and you can mix and match and bring it in our classrooms. And as I was saying, ethics is very important because teachers ought to talk what they walk and practice what they teach. Otherwise, there will be credibility gap. There are different theories. I won't explain. Only 3 theories I'll explain. There are major ethical theories. Every time you face an ethical problem, imagine there is one child, one student in your classroom who's brilliant, and there are other students who are facing challenges in learning. Okay, there are 5 students who are facing challenge in learning, and there is one student who is brilliant. Whom should you focus on? If you teach all of them in the same manner, it won't work. If you focus on the brilliant student, maybe he'll become Einstein, but the rest of them might fail. So what will you do? That's called differentiated learning method. You have to use differentiated learning method, and every day teacher is making an ethical decision in classroom. Sir, what is the difference between morality and ethics? Moral philosophy is a department which studies what is good. Yes, there is a department which studies what is good. There's a whole department like mechanical engineering, computer science engineering. There is a department which just studies what is good. And that department is called moral philosophy. Okay, ethics does not study what is good. Ethics says there are 10 options or 20 options, which one is better? Maybe all the options are not moral, but we have 10 options, which one is better? Okay, and there are 3 major ethical theories like utilitarian ethics. For example, if you're a civil engineer, if you have to construct a bridge, okay, then you have to demolish houses nearby because the bridge helps more people. So you demolish houses and you give them compensation somewhere else. You give them houses somewhere else. That is utilitarian decision, maximizing benefit, minimizing pain. Okay, and then we have deontological ethics and virtue ethics. So different theories are used in policy decision making. Even teachers, when they make decisions in the classroom, they ought to know based on what they made decisions, so that tomorrow if someone questions, they'll be able to justify themselves. Okay, I just want you to know that these things exist. And there are references. If you want any reference, you can look into it. I'll send it to you. Okay, so there's my email ID, s.hireman.11@ucl.ac.uk. My Facebook ID is Sagar space AH. You can find me and add me up on Facebook. Instagram, just type Sagar Earthling. Do you know what is Earthling? All living organisms on planet Earth together are called Earthlings. Okay, so type Sagar Earthling, you'll find me on Instagram. YouTube, you type Sagar Earthling, you'll find my YouTube videos. You can find my YouTube channel, Sagar Earthling. All my television interviews are there. Twitter also, you can do the same. Okay, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And once all this COVID thing is over, you can also give me a call, plan things in your college. I'll be very happy to come to your college and inspire your students, teachers. Okay, we can have FDPs and do other things as well. Thanks very much for your patience. And I also want to tell you, remember, there is no thrill in easy sailing when the sky is clear and blue. There is no joy in merely doing things which anybody can do, but there is a satisfaction mighty sweet to take when you reach a destination you thought you would never make. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for such a wonderful and knowledgeable session, sir. There are some questions raised by our participants. A question from Assistant Professor Rajesh Kumar of Govindgarh Public College, Punjab. He asks, as students are completing some online courses during this lockdown period, do you think it creates a challenge for students as well as for the teachers to adapt the same?
See, there is a wonderful saying which says, those who resist change indirectly resist progress. Although all changes are not progress, there cannot be progress without change. Okay, I'll repeat it once again. Those who resist change indirectly resist progress. Although all changes are not progress, all changes may not be good changes, but there cannot be progress without change. It is difficult to adapt, but human beings are built to adapt. Okay, we are built to adapt. We used to live in forest as hunter-gatherers. Look where we are now, sitting thousands of miles away, speaking to each other. That's why in the classroom, teacher ought to build this ability among students so that they become adaptable. Okay, we have to build this ability among students so they can adapt to different situations. Did we all expect a day will come when we have to wear masks and gloves and walk around? To a certain extent, we did expect, because climate change is a serious issue. IPCC has given a number, 1.5 degrees. What is IPCC? Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. The global temperature, if it goes above 1.5 degrees, there will be environmental reactions which can't be undone. Basically, what they're saying is, it's like firing a bullet, you can't bring it back. So COVID-19 is just a beginning. There are a lot of things like this coming up, and we have to make our students adapt to different situations. Things will get worse. Okay, once the polar ice caps melt, sea level rises, intensity of hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, eccentric rain, it will all go on increasing. Okay, so we have to prepare our students to adapt. And how do you prepare our students to adapt? That's why we should live it in the classroom. Okay, you don't just teach the syllabus, you teach the students, you inspire them, you motivate them. Okay, and tell them the purpose. TP Kailasam, an author from Karnataka, had written a book called Purpose. In that book, he says, basically he explains the story of Ekalavya and all these people. Okay, teachers love Ekalavya because teachers always say, Ekalavya, give thumb, what will you give? I won't say that. See, he explains the story and he says, Arjuna asks Dronacharya, look, Dronacharya, you had promised, you had taken an oath not to teach anyone else. How did you teach Arjuna? So Ekalavya, so Arjuna, Dronacharya replies Arjuna saying that, look, he's not just greater than you, he's even greater than me. And if we both work together, we can't reach his level. And then Arjuna is bewildered and he asks why. He says, because his goal is impersonal. Our goal is personal. Arjuna practiced because he wanted to be the greatest archer in the world. Ekalavya practiced because he wanted to protect his domestic animals from other wild creatures. Impersonal goals thrive better than personal goals. Don't make them self-centered, possessive individuals. Make them people who inspire others. Okay, that takes challenge in the classroom. Okay, that's what we have to do.
Thanks for the response, sir. One more question from Assistant Professor Mohammad Farhan from Royal College of Maharashtra. Can you suggest some hands-on on virtual lab facilities which should be available post-COVID scenario?
Okay, there are many hands-on. For example, there are many games. There are many online quizzes which can be done in the classroom, which I personally use in the classroom. There are hundreds of them. I'll send you in the link. I'll send you all the details so that you can use. There are so many apps coming up for the classroom. If you have a technology-based classroom, so many amazing apps and have come up that you can use in the classroom and make learning very easy. But at the same time, you should never forget your philosophy of education, because that's the anchor. You may very well be lost by just using technology. Okay, I'll send you the apps that you want hands-on apps. I'll send you. Using those apps, you can do a lot of hands-on activities in the classroom. However, as I said, don't forget the educational philosophy, because that will lead to a problem. There is a school, international school in Bangalore, which charges 25 lakhs per month, and they have a robot in the classroom to teach. Okay, teacher is just assisting. So basically, robot is delivering the syllabus. Okay, and they think this is a technological miracle. They think this is really great. I respectfully disagree with them. I'll give an example for that. Alan Turing, if you've heard about Alan Turing, wrote a paper called Can Machines Think? Okay, all robotic, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all the technology that you see now started based on that small paper written by Alan Turing, Can Machines Think? By the way, Alan Turing was single-handedly responsible for breaking Enigma codes, because of which, say, Germany was defeated in the Second World War. Enigma codes. There is even a movie on this, Imitation Game. If anybody is interested, you can watch it. So Alan Turing wrote a small paper called Can Machines Think? In that, the very first few lines he says, to ask a question whether machines can think is meaningless to deserve discussion. It's like asking whether submarines can swim. Can submarines swim? It goes underwater. I know most of you know there is a difference. When airplanes fly, birds fly, there is a difference. Okay, so we should know what Alan Turing is trying to say is, even if machines could think in the future, we would know it, because human beings have not been able to answer a simple question. What is thinking? Where do dreams come from? Simple questions, we don't have answers. So we shouldn't forget and get carried away in this technological boom, thinking, oh my God, it's all technology. We should not forget the basic educational philosophy in the midst of this. The links that you want for your classroom, the apps that I'll send it to you, you can use them in your classroom.
Thanks a lot, sir, for such a wonderful responses. Many of the other queries are already solved through your presentations, mainly of that gamification. So thanks a lot, sir, for such a wonderful session.